So as you can see on your screen, I am showing you hundreds of randomly generated faces, which is a visual that I used for the recent 90-second video over at CG Matter. But what I'm interested in for this tutorial is not how do you extract hundreds of faces, which we'll talk about, but how did I automate it? How did I get to hundreds instead of just 10? And I'll show you what I mean. So you can see here's a website. It's a cool website. It's called thispersondoesnotexist.com. What it is every time you load it, so I'm just going to refresh it, it's just going to load a picture that of a person that doesn't exist, and you can see some of the distortion that's happening here, and if you look kind of closely, you can tell it's not a real person. But in general, it's an impressive website, and if I wanted to download a bunch of these, so this is how I got the faces, I'd just right-click, I'd go to Save Image As, give it a name, and then I'd repeat this again and again and again and again and again. So the question is, how did I automate it? And here's how I did it. I basically wrote a script, which I'm going to teach you how to write. This is a programming tutorial, but don't worry, it's going to be easy. So for example, this script is going to extract 5 images, so let's run the script. And you can see it's going through them, it's refreshing, it's doing the right clicking, the save image. And this whole idea of automating is very powerful. It goes way beyond just extracting faces. Basically anything that is a repetitive task, I'm going to teach you how to fully automate. So the only thing you're going to need for this tutorial is we're going to be using something called AutoHotKey. If you do not have this, download it. It's free, and it's basically a scripting language, open source, I believe, that lets you automate anything in Windows or maybe Mac as well, like clicking, typing, all of this. So you're going to download AutoHotKey, install it, and then I'm going to show you how to write a very basic script to automate a thing like saving images, which again, not the most interesting example in the world, but it's very useful, especially when I needed that kind of visual. And I should also mention that thing where my webcam kind of goes off to the corner whenever I have my cursor hovering over it. That's another example of something that was automated using AutoHotKey. So there are many applications for various different things. But first, sponsor of this video, and then let me teach you a bit of programming. Wait a second, I thought this was supposed to be a sponsored segment. There we go, now we're talking. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. And for those of you that haven't heard, Skillshare is an online learning community where you can watch courses about pretty much anything, especially digital skills, including videography, photography, drawing, and also, yes, there are Blender tutorials, which is probably what I expect you to be watching on there, but you can see whatever you want. And yes, there are online workshops and all this, but I want to recommend to you one premium course in particular that you might like. Remington, or as you might know him as Southern Shoddy, has a Blender course on Skillshare that's all about taking an illustration that you made, something that you drew with your hands, and then converting it into 3D space using Blender with not only the modeling, but also the shading, the environment, the lighting, all this. And you can watch that premium course or all other premium courses on Skillshare ad-free when you have the premium membership. But let me cut you a deal in case you're interested. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description are going to get a 1-month free trial of the Skillshare Premium membership. So you can watch that course or pretty much anything on Skillshare, and by pretty much anything that you want on Skillshare. So check that out. Okay, and we're back. Let me teach you how to program with AutoHotKey, which I'm assuming you know nothing about. So once you've downloaded and installed this thing, again, you don't need to know anything. You're going to notice that when you right click, we're going to have an option under New to create an AutoHotKey script. If you don't have this, that means you didn't install it. So let's make a AutoHotKey script, which, long story short, is basically a text file. So let's give this thing a name. Call it something like the Super Duper Looper extractor. I don't know, something like that. Give it a name. It doesn't really matter what it is. And then to actually edit and write code in the script, you're going to right click. And some people say there's something called edit script, which I don't see here. I see run, compile, whatever. If you have edit script, click that. If not, just go to open with and then Notepad or whatever text editor you want. And you're going to see there's a bunch of text already written up here. There's no environment, apparently. It's recommending for us to do something. Don't worry about any of that. We're going to go to the last line, hit enter 2 or 3 times, and just start like typing down here. And this is where our code is going to be. So before we write any code, let's break down this task so we know what we're doing, and then just write the line. So in this case, again, we're trying to extract images, which, long story short, boils down to hitting the F5 key or hitting refresh, so that a new image loads. So we need to refresh. We need to right click. We need to go to Save Image As, which, by the way, you can also just hit the letter V as the shortcut. We then need to give this a name and then save it. And then we need to rinse and repeat this process. So let's go step by step by step. So we could refresh at the end of this process. So really the first task is how do we right click so we can save image as? Well, The command for this, and a lot of this is pretty intuitive, it's what you think, is if we want to right click, we are going to click. So this is basically telling AutoHotKey to click, but we need to tell it a couple things. Should it be a left or right click? Where should it click? All of this. So we're going to click. We want it to be right. If you didn't type this, it would have been a left click. And then the next thing is we just need to tell it the coordinates of where it should right click. Should it be here or should it be here? And long story short, it just needs to be in this bounds of Google Chrome in this case. So the coordinates we give this are just X and Y coordinates, like 100 by 100 or 1000 by 250, whatever. But the way these coordinates work, they're kind of like window coordinates. The top left corner should be 0, 0. And as we progress to the right, we increase on the x-axis. So this is 0, 0, and then x is getting bigger, and then y is getting bigger as we go down the screen. It's kind of inverted for what you'd think for y. So let's try 100, 100. So I'm just going to Control S to save the script. And then we can just at any point right-click, run script, and you can see it right-clicked. I didn't do that automatically at this position, 100 by 100. So it's kind of diagonally down by 100. Let's find the coordinates that are good for this. So it should definitely be way more to the right. So X should be way larger. So let's try 1000. And we can just keep prototyping until it works. So run script. And now it automatically right-clicked there, which again is close, but it should now be further down. So again, Y increases as we go down. So let's just augment this. Just like real programming, you know, you write one line, test it, whatever. Run script. Perfect. So now it has right-clicked in the right environment. You know, it's in Google Chrome, which means the context is now going to have like save image as and all of this instead of just like these options. So first thing in the script is done. Next, we want it to either click save image as by, again, inputting in the coordinates, or as I told you, the shortcut for this is V. And let's do that because coordinates are way harder. So how do we tell this after you're done right-clicking, type V? Well, we did the clicking, so next line, we're just going to click, or we're going to type rather, send, and this is the command we use the most. So send basically tells AutoHotKey to, simulate pressing this on the keyboard, so we are going to send the letter V as if it's typing it. Now, what you're going to notice is in theory this should work, but it might not work in practice, so let's just try it, run script. It does work. So we right-click, we click V, and it opens up this menu. The only reason I said maybe it won't work is sometimes when you right-click, it takes like a half second to actually open this up. So just in case it's going a bit too fast, and especially when we loop this might happen, I'm going to add a command in between right-clicking and hitting V for save image as. I'm going to add a sleep command, and generally these are going to be the only three commands we use: click, sleep, and send. I'm going to have the sleep for 500 milliseconds. So this is in milliseconds. If we had 1000, it would be 1 second, 2000, 2 seconds, etc. So it's going to right click, it's going to wait half a second, and then it's going to type the letter V. So let's try that. So you can see this time it waited a bit longer. So now the next order of operations is we need to have this type something like a file name, so we know what to call this. And then we need to get a bit more complicated because the first image should be called something and the second image should be called something else, like incrementing it up. We can't reuse the same thing. So for now, just as a demo, we can try sending the text name. So just like we typed V, now we're going to type name, and I'm going to add in another delay here. This one could be maybe a bit more gradual, maybe a quarter of a second. So let's try running this. So it's right-clicking. It hit V, and now you can see typed out name. And we could have this type out whatever file name we want. But again, I'm just going to increase this a bit. Again, the challenge is how do we change what this is every single time? Because I don't want to write code for every single save. I want it to loop. Well, this is where variables come in. Just like any other programming language or scripting language, either, we need a concept of variable, something that we can change the value of. It's variable. It's not constant. So let's make a variable. Let's call it name, and we're going to set it equal to 1. So we have this variable. You can think of it as an integer or whatever, and it's assigned the value 1. So name is equal to 1. And you might think, okay, so we have this, it's right-clicking, blah, blah, blah. So now when we send name, maybe it should call this file 1, and that would kind of make sense, but you're going to notice when we run it, it does the same thing. It just literally types out name instead of taking the value that it's, storing. This is because, again, we are sending literally the text name. It has nothing to do with this variable. So to actually reference the variable, you got to put these percentage signs, and I know I keep introducing new concepts, but this is pretty much all you need. So These percentage signs, I don't know if it makes it like reference this as a variable or converts it from an integer to a string or whatever, but this is what is necessary to make it work. So now let's try it. I'm going to run the script. And you can see this time it called it 1. So it took the name variable and it said, oh, it's equal to 1. I'm going to type that out. Okay. The next thing we need to do is we need it to actually save it. And we do that by hitting enter to actually save, as if we clicked save, you know. And that's going to save that to the desktop. In other words, after we type in the thing, I'm going to have it wait a bit. And again, you can experiment with this and bring down the milliseconds so it doesn't take forever, especially if you're extracting 100 images. But we're going to have it sleep, and then we're going to have it send enter. But just like you can't type enter and expect it to, you know, it's going to literally type in the text enter. Same with the name variable. We need to have a special kind of symbol to show enter. And what you do is you put it inside these brackets and you type in enter. This way we know it's the enter key, not the text enter. So now this should be saving a full image. Let's try it. So it's going to run, right click, V, all this, and it saved the image. So already pretty useful script. But the whole idea of this is how do we get this to download 100 images for us? Because, you know, we could do this ourselves, but we need it to be faster. So after it's done with this whole process, what we want it to do is refresh the page. Again, that's the whole point. Every time you refresh this website in particular, it gives you a new face. That's just because that's how this website is programmed. So we're going to need it to send the key. So I'm putting it in brackets, F5, and that's just the hotkey for refreshing. Again, it's in brackets, so it doesn't type in the letter F and then the number 5. So if we run this, it should save an image, and then it should refresh. So let's try it. Okay, downloaded it, and it did a successful refresh. And our image is saved here. Now this, of all the moments where we could have this sleep, this is the most important because you see after we refresh, it takes a hot second. And it depends on your internet connection. So you really want to make sure that after this F5 refresh, we have it sleep for a good amount of time. So I'm going to have it sleep for like 1.25 seconds, so 1250 milliseconds. And after it's done this, you can notice essentially we've downloaded the image, we've refreshed, we've waited, and now we just want to have it take it back up to the top because we've done everything. We just need it to loop. And to do that, let's just make it loop. So we take all these commands, so starting off with the right clicking and then all this, to make it repeat this process now, all you have to do is type in loop. And unlike other programming languages, scripting languages like Python, C++, whatever, you're going to notice a lot of the syntax here. Very simple. You don't need to have a while or a for loop. You just say loop. You say, I want it to loop, let's say 3 times. So you could put in any number here. And then what do we want it to loop? Anything between here and here. So we're kind of giving it a scope or a window. So it's going to loop anything between this bracket and this bracket 3 times. So it's going to right click, it's going to save, it's going to refresh, it's going to wait, take it back up to the top, etc. Now, those of you that are paying attention are going to notice that there is an issue with the script. And I'll let you think about that. I'm going to run it and you're going to see what the issue is. So let's try running the script. Okay, so it saves an image, no problem, refreshes, now goes for it again, and you're going to notice, we already have the name 1.jpg, and then it kind of gets glitchy. What's happened here is it saved the image, right? No problem there. We have our first image, and it's refreshed. But it can't save the second one because it's trying to override it. Why is it doing that? Because we're calling it the same thing, and we're still calling it name, which is equal to 1. In other words, we keep trying to make images that are called 1.jpg. So what we want this to do is the next image should be 2.jpg, 3.jpg. We need to increment it. So before we go back up to the top, we need to change what this is equal to. But again, we can't just say now name is equal to 2 because we're going to have the same issue. So what we need to do is just have this do something like name is equal to name plus 1. If you've ever seen something like this, we're just reassigning this what it was before, but we're increasing it by 1. Now, it just so happens in AutoHotKey, I don't think this is valid. So I think a fast way to type this is you just name plus plus, which is a thing in other scripting languages. What this is going to do is once it reaches this point, it's going to take this value and it's going to bump it up by 1. So if we think about it, when we run the script, we're going to have this variable equal to 1. Then we're going to start this. We're going to right click, we're going to save it, we're going to call it 1. It's going to refresh, and now it's going to be equal to 2, and now it's going to cycle. And notice it's never going to go back up to this line since it's done that, and now we're going to be stuck in this loop, which is now incrementing, so it should work. So let's try that. So let's try running the script. So it's, okay, saved an image, saved an image, saved an image. Perfect. Now, the reason it's taking so long is, again, because of this massive delay we've put in here. But you can see it's successfully done 1, 2, 3 images. So really, at this point, you're like, okay, but I want more than 3 images. Literally, all we have to do is increase this number. So let's try 7. So I've only changed a single number, and now it's going to be doing a bit more than twice the amount of work as before. And you can see it's just going to keep doing this. Now, we could make this a bit more sophisticated. So instead of just running the script and then it happens, we could have it say, run the script, and only when I hit a certain hotkey, like Control P or whatever, which is parenting in Blender, but only when I hit Control P will it trigger all these actions. We could do that, but for now, let's just keep it simple. So you can see it's downloaded the first 7 images. So now, really, it's just a matter of, so how did I download 100 images? I just made this number a bit bigger, so let's try 15. And now let's try bringing down the delay where we can. So the right click, I want to have it still have a good amount of delay. But I think in some of these other areas is where we can save some time. And for some of these, you might even be able to remove the sleep command. But you want to be careful, because if you're wrong and then you start this loop of 15 or 100 things, it's going to be a while until it's like done doing the incorrect thing. So I'm just going to lower our times as much as possible. So here, we've probably shaved off 1.5 seconds per cycle. So let's try this. And we got to make sure we deleted all the images, otherwise we're going to have overwriting issues. And you can also do something where it saves to a certain directory, but for now, let's keep it simple. So run script. So you can see now it's running much, much faster, and it still seems to work. Again, the bottleneck here seems to be refreshing, but this seems to be fine. So it's just going through these. And in my version, which I can show you in a second, the image scraper script, it should be very identical. I actually want to see what I did differently since I haven't looked at it in a hot minute. But you can see, even if this takes like a bit longer than download 100 images automatically, just imagine how long it takes to right click, save image as, type in something manually. And the thing is, you could just run the script, go make some toast, and by the time you're back, even though it's taking 1 second per cycle, you have a couple hundred images. So you can see here we have 15 images. And this is generally our script. I'm going to close this for now. So with the image scraper script, which is the original, let's open it with Notepad. It should be pretty similar. So here you can see I have 120, and I did a couple batches of those. I didn't set it to 1,000 just in case it had an issue. I didn't want it to be stuck in this very long loop. But you can see in general, I think I put slightly different coordinates here. And I think everything else in general is the same, just different sleep amounts, whatever. So this is in general how you make the script. So again, let me just show it to you so you could type it out. But again, hopefully you were watching through this tutorial and not just looking for the end result so you can actually understand. So again, final time going over this. We make a variable that is going to be the name of the file. We're going to have it be equal to 1 for now. Then for 15 or however many loops, we are going to go through the process of right-clicking at a certain coordinate, in other words, inside Chrome. We're then going to hit V to go to save image as. We're going to give it the name of the variable, which is why we need these %signs. We're going to have it wait. We're going to click enter to save it. We're going to refresh. We're going to increment this. So the next one is called image 2 and 3 and 4. And then, it loops. So that's the essence of it. And hopefully you understood it. And I know I normally do not do programming tutorials, but if this was interesting to you, let me know, and I can make more programming tutorials either in this context or maybe programming directly in Blender since, there's the Python thing. But either way, Patreon, that's what you're seeing on the right. Let me talk about that. So Patreon, it exists. It's a place where you can support both this channel and the CG Matter channel. It has the same Patreon account. And what you get in return is not only, the credits and funding the tutorial channels, but you also get actual perks. So some tutorials you get to watch early. So that's early access. This tutorial you could have seen a couple days early, or at least a day early. I always put default cube tutorials out a day early there. So early access, exclusive tutorials. So for the 90 seconds I made about measuring beauty, I'm going to make a exclusive tutorial about how to actually like use the blend and actually get a numerical value for how attractive somebody is. But also I made like this hand crawling thing, a 4-part tutorial series last month. You get access to all of those. You get access to blend files, project files, etc. For example, this little script, of course, I'm just going to upload, why not? But you get access to any blend or any whatever I've ever uploaded. So hundreds of files, early access, exclusive tutorials, etc. And if you just want to support these channels, it's the best way to do it. So I appreciate all the patrons. And other than that, hopefully you learned something about programming. We have probably gone for a while. Yeah, we have. So let me wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.